Good afternoon, everybody. Madam Roy back once again. Well, I have a video that's been requested by quite a few of my subscribers. Everybody keeps saying they want another cooking video. Well, you guys are getting it today. Today we are going to do a homemade beef stew. Now, I'm not following any recipes with this. This is kind of an idea of my own. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I'm going to go over the ingredients we need with this. First thing, of course, is your beef. Now, this is just cube beef that I bought at the Food Lion. Cut it just about that size. Chunks are maybe about a ½ an inch wide. You're going to need some olive oil, beef broth, got about 8 potatoes here, garlic. This is some of my friend Chris's dehydrated vegetable mix, celery. These are some cut up rutabagas that I had left over from another meal, green onion, got some carrots here, about 8 of them. This is what a whole rutabaga looks like for you guys that don't know what they look like. 2 sweet Spanish onions, some onion powder, salt, pepper, and just some beef bouillon cubes in case it doesn't quite have that beef taste that we want at the end. Oh, and one last thing I forgot. To thicken it up towards the end, we're going to use some Argo cornstarch. So let's go ahead and get started. For preparing the beef, again, I cut it up and put it in this pot here, or this pan. I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle about 4 or 5 tablespoons of olive oil on there. And then I'm going to take my minced garlic. You can buy garlic and mince it yourself, but I got this at the dollar store. It's called Pampa mixed garlic. And I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle that on here a little bit, and then pour just a little bit of the juice on there. Now we're going to take it over to the stove. I'm going to move this pot away because we're going to be using that later. I'm going to go ahead and put it on a medium heat, just about like that. Now remember, you're going to go ahead and just brown this. You're not actually cooking this meat right now. It's just to brown it and get a sear on it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back with you guys in a few minutes. Alright everybody, so we're getting a good sear on this. The flame just coming up and heating the pan up now. Just want to keep stirring it every once in a while. Make sure you get all the, basically you're just getting the redness off it, and you want to go ahead and get a little bit of char on each piece. Alright YouTube, now that we have this pretty much browned, I'm going to go ahead and turn the gas off. Now, depending on how thick you have it is going to depend, of course, how long you have to brown it, but as long as you see you're getting a little bit of char on each piece, then you're good to go. From this point, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what this base is. This is basically some fresh tomato stock that me and my good friend Chris produced yesterday. If you want to see how that's done, you can check out his channel, Christopher Galosi. Just type in Christopher Galosi on YouTube. But now that this meat is browned, I'm going to go ahead and dump this in. And again, I'm not worried about any residual fat because in this case this was top round beef, and the very little bit of fat in there is fine because that's just going to give some extra flavor to our beef stew. Alright, now that I have the beef in the tomatoes cooking on the stove, it's time to go ahead and start chopping our vegetables up. And why not? Let's go ahead and start with the onions. Now, for me, I like to have a thick cut just because I'm a big guy and I like a hearty beef stew. So that's what we're going to do. And again, we're not worried about any kind of style. As long as they're cut decently, That's all I care about. So just like that, and remember, it's going to go ahead and break apart more once you put it in the stew itself. So depending on your preference, if you want it thinner than this, you may go ahead and cut it thinner. Alright, now we're moving on to the green onions. These I am going to chop a little bit finer because I want them to just kind of blend into the background. I don't want there to be huge chunks of green onion in there. Remember, this is just going to be for flavor, so not like this. And that's about it. You don't, about an inch from the stem you don't want to use because the flavor on that's not very good. Okay, just move those to the side for a minute. Next we'll cut up some carrots. Now the carrots I do want to be fairly thick because I like tasting them in the stew, so I would say about a ½ inch slices. ½ inch to an inch, and you know what? You can actually do different size slices. Again, this is just going to be a hearty beef stew, so we're not really worried about it being that exact. And there we go. We have all of the carrots completed. So what I'm doing is I'm going to put all the vegetables together in a bowl. Now my cutting board is getting a little full. I'm going to go ahead and push it over the edge here and put everything in this bowl. And of course we're going to drop one or two on the way, but that's okay. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to I already have some that are pre-cut that we used in another stew a few days ago. So I'm just going to go ahead and put those into the vegetable bowl. Now, we'll go ahead and move on to the rutabaga itself. Now, one thing to note, when you get a rutabaga, it has quite a thick skin, so the best thing to do is to use something like a potato peeler to actually peel the skin off. On either the edges where the rind is, you're going to have to peel a little bit more because there's a little hard piece there you have to take off before you get to the actual rutabaga itself. You can either peel it or just use a knife to cut that off. Okay, so I have this basically cut in about a half. I'm going to go ahead and not use the smaller one. We'll go ahead and cut the rest of this up. And again, I want fairly substantial chunks of this rutabaga. This is actually almost the consistency of an unripened pineapple. Even has about the same look too. And we're just going to go ahead and put those in the bowl. Alright, we're moving on to the parsley, everybody. Best way to do parsley is kind of a rocking motion. Just want to go back and forth, and when you go down you want to go ahead and just glide backwards. Don't worry, if you don't get it as fine as you want the first time, you can always go back and cut it a little bit more. I'm just going to do this one more time. It's not going to be a super thin cut, but it's not going to be a super thick cut either. Because you got to remember, this is going to be stewing for over an hour. So it's definitely going to go ahead and cut it down. It's going to be a lot thinner than, say, what you would get in the Toscana soup at Olive Garden. So about like that is what you want. Go ahead and put that in the bowl. And let's go ahead and move on to our celery. Now, the key to celery is you want to make sure you get all of the leaves off. You don't want any of that to get into your stew. So what I like to do is just pull the stalks off. And I'm not sure I'm going to use all of this, so we'll start with about 6 stalks. Go ahead and make sure they're even on there, with the stems the same, all facing the same way. I'm going to go ahead and cut it about 1/2 inch to 1 inch down, and discard those pieces. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the bottom, just right to the end of the leaflets there. So this is basically what you want. This is the good usable celery right there. Now we're going to go ahead and cut it about 1/2 inch pieces. Cut that one end off of that one. And if I had to measure this, I'd say this is about a cup of celery. And that should be more than enough for your stew. But again, because I'm not actually following a recipe here, this is just going to depend on your personal preference. Alright, so the very last thing we have to do is cut our potatoes. Now, I have washed these thoroughly in a sink with a colander. I am going to keep the skin on because one, I like it that way, and 2, these are just white potatoes with a fairly thin skin to start with. If you're using something like a russet potato, I would highly recommend peeling them, as those skins are very tough even after you cook them. Again, I'm going to do a fairly thick cut here. Pieces like that are fine. You can have them a little bit thicker if you want. Again, going back to just this being personal preference on my part. And I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting the rest of these 6 or 7 potatoes, and we'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. Alright everybody, now we have our vegetables all chopped up. I just put them all in this bowl here. We've had our sauce, if you guys can see that, with the beef in it, stewing ever since. It's been about a half an hour or so, because you want to have your beef cooking first because it takes longer than the vegetables. So the very next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put the vegetables into the pot. Because it's pretty full, I'm going to start doing it this way. And again, it doesn't matter that they're not mixed there, because once they're in the pot, they're going to be mixed. Now, I got to see if we're actually going to need all these vegetables or not. It's always good to have more than you need. Okay. So for now, that's all the vegetables I'm going to put in. If there's room later on, I'll go ahead and incorporate them. Very next thing we need to do is put in some beef broth. This is just beef flavored broth you can get at any store. They're 32 ounces each, and I'm going to use 2 of them. Let's go ahead and pour it in. Try to do it evenly. Drench the vegetables if you can. Just to give it a much nicer flavor. That's 1. And 2. Now, I think we can probably put a few more vegetables in there, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Go ahead and incorporate definitely the rest of the potatoes. And I think I'm just going to leave a few out for breakfast tomorrow, because Saute that up with some eggs and maybe a few more cup potatoes, and that's going to make yourself a good skillet. Next, we're going to go ahead and put in some more of the minced garlic. Now, I like a lot of garlic. I usually use about 2 heaping teaspoons. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more of the garlic juice. Now we're coming to a special point here. We are going to add some of my good buddy Chris's, and he's doing the filming today. Say hi, Chris.
Hey, how's everything going, YouTubers?
We're going to use some of his special vegetable mixture that he makes in the dehydrator. Check out his channel if you want to see that video. And what do you think, Chris? How much of this should I put in?
Make it 1 heaping teaspoon, or tablespoon, excuse me.
Okay, so 1 heaping tablespoon. Go ahead and distribute that evenly. And because in this family we like a lot of pepper, I am definitely going to put in some pepper. For you guys that are the average pepper eaters, I would say about 2 tablespoons, maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons. For me, it's going to be more like 2 or 3 tablespoons. And that's about it. And that's going to be it for the ingredients. It's starting to look really nice, but at this point, everything has got to boil away. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the flame up to about, say about 5, which is about a medium flame on a gas range. Go ahead and let this cook, and we'll show you what it looks like when we're done. Alright, it's time to check on our beef stew. As you can see, we are getting a little bit of a boil there. Go ahead and stir this up a bit. This is kind of a weak flame, so I think I'm actually going to go ahead and turn it up even more than this, because remember, you want this to be at a boil because it needs to go ahead and cook the rest of the vegetables in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lid back on and turn this flame up to high. And we'll check back with it in a couple of, probably about 10-15 minutes. Alright, so we've had this cooking down now for about 40 minutes and it's looking good. Took a quick taste of it and thought it needs a few more items. So I already put in some salt, pepper, and garlic powder. One other thing I'm going to put in is some celery salt. That always gives it a little bit better flavor. Celery salt is salty, so you want to be careful. I would say put in maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons should be good for something this size. And this is not coming out very well, so just go ahead and kind of shake it like that. We'll go ahead and stir it up a little bit. And I am going to wind up thickening this up a little bit because it's still a little soupy. Remember, this wants to be a little bit more like a stew, or at least somewhere in between. So go ahead and let this cook a little bit more, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Alright, now it's time to go ahead and thicken this up a little bit. I'm going to take some of this Argo cornstarch, and all you do with this is you take a few spoonfuls and put it in a bowl. Start with about that much. And then what you do is you bring it over and put some water in it. And unfortunately, somebody didn't put it back on the water setting. Go ahead and put some water in there. Then you just go ahead and start stirring it. I want this to be about the consistency of pancake batter. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and once it's ready to go in, I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, now that we have the cornstarch mixed, I'm going to go ahead and pull the lid off. Go ahead and start by putting just a little bit in there. Maybe about 1/4 of it. Say about 1/2. Whoop, getting a little steamy there, guys. And we'll just go ahead and stir that in a little bit. And that should start thickening this up really, really quickly. Cornstarch takes about 5 or 10 minutes, and hopefully that'll get us about to the thickness we want it to be. Go ahead and put the rest in there. Remember, about the consistency of pancake batter is the right consistency for everything. All right, and we'll go ahead and show you the finished product when it's done. Probably be about another half an hour. All right, it's been another 10 or 15 minutes, and I think we are about ready. Take a look at that, guys. Delicious, nutritious, hearty beef stew. And let's see if I can go ahead and spoon some into a bowl here. Again, all those delicious vegetables in there. Try to get some beef too. And I did actually wind up having to add a couple of beef cubes, but that is no big deal. And here it is, guys. Delicious beef stew. You can make it home within a couple of hours. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, have a blessed day, everybody.